From the Pep Radio Newsroom, these are the stories we are covering at this hour. LGBTQ Nation is reporting that on Thursday, the United States House of Representatives passed a bill that would give authority to the Treasury Department to revoke 501c nonprofits' tax exempt status if they're believed to support terrorism. House Resolution 9495, also known as the Stop Terror Financing and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act, was sponsored by Representative Tenny Claudia, a Republican from New York, and passed through the House in a 219 to 184 vote. It has gone through multiple different forms since it was initially introduced in response to pro-Palestine organizers in the wake of the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. According to anthropologist and legal scholar Daryl Lee, who spoke to Democracy Now!, this bill exists exclusively as a means for the right wing to crush their political opponents, especially those who advocate for the rights of Palestinians who were recently found by the International Criminal Court to be victims of war crimes enacted by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This bill is essentially a civil rights disaster that would allow the government to shut down nonprofits on the smear of being terrorist supporting organizations. This law requires an accusation with no evidence but a tie-in. It's an accusation that nonprofits are supporting a group on one of the existing international terrorism lists. The bill is essentially discriminatory by design, he said. Initially, it did have significant bipartisan support because, of course, anti-Palestinian racism is one of the great bipartisan unifiers in Congress. Representative Jason Smith, a Republican from Missouri, justified the bill as a plain way to defund terrorism. We as members of Congress have the duty to make sure that taxpayers are not subsidizing terrorism. It's very, very simple, he said on the House floor. Smith didn't provide any evidence that any major U.S. nonprofit group has ever supported terrorism. Lee says it's extremely unlikely for the bill to harm any right-wing conservative groups who are often the ones lobbying terrorism accusations at their political opponents. Right-wingers and white supremacists in Congress can support this bill with the assurance that their allies, right-wing extremist groups, are highly, highly unlikely to ever be targeted by this bill because there isn't going to. It's much less likely that they will be smeared with an accusation of being tied to an international terrorist organization that's already on one of the government's lists, Lee said. Groups that could be on the chopping block with this bill include the American Civil Liberties Union, Planned Parenthood, the Human Rights Campaign, as well as nonprofit news outlets like Mother Jones or ProPublica. Representative Lloyd Doggett, a Democrat from Texas, further agrees that the bill could be extremely authoritarian depending on how it's implemented, especially in the wake of Trump's election. Authoritarianism is not born overnight. It creeps in, Doggett said. A tyrant tightens his grip not just by seizing power, but when he demands new powers and when those who can stop him willingly cede and bend to his will. For the record, Pennsylvania Equality Project is a 501c3, and Pep Radio is a subsidiary of the Pennsylvania Equality Project. In other news, a Texas city infamous for placing a $10,000 bounty on trans people who use bathrooms and locker rooms that do not align with their sex assigned at birth has voted to make its policy even more strict. On Tuesday, the Odessa City Council voted 5-1 to maintain its bathroom ban and allow individual citizens, whether or not they are Odessa or even Texas residents, to sue a trans person for a minimum of $10,000 in damages if they violate it. There is no cap on how large the bounty can be. It also approved an expansion of the law. Once applied only to public facilities, it will now apply to private ones as well. You are putting a target on the queer community's back by offering a reward and taking money out of their pockets, Odessa resident and business owner Bradley Burke told the council during public comments as reported by Lone Star Live. The trans community is not a threat to Odessa or anyone in the bathroom, said Matilda Mann Morales, president of local LGBTQ+ group out in West Texas. We're just trying to live out our lives. I don't want the government in the bathroom. Speakers also argued that trans people have not historically posed any risk to people in the bathroom and are instead statistically far more at risk of being abused or harassed while trying to use facilities. Lone Star Live reported that Odessa police have not received any report about public restrooms in 3 years, and police in several states have said they have been unable to identify any cases of trans people harassing anyone in a public bathroom. A letter from the ACLU of Texas to the Odessa City Council and Mayor Javier Joven pointed out that the last-minute addition of private facilities in the legislation is likely a violation of the Texas Open Meetings Act because the city did not provide adequate notice to business owners and Odessa residents that the local government was exposing them to immense liability on private property. The letter also pointed out that the proposal to place a bounty of $10,000 per occurrence on anyone using a restroom on private property could bankrupt many businesses and Odessa residents, as well as flood the courts with frivolous lawsuits. For more information on the stories we cover, check out the Pennsylvania Equality Project website at paequality.com. Click on the radio tower. Be sure to download the Live 365 app to take PEP Radio with you wherever you go. That's the news at this hour. Now back to more music on PEP Radio.